Hello, everyone. Hey, I'm just going ahead and pinning Lucky's payment info while we wait for more people to join. This is also a good time to test my audio. Can y'all hear me? Hey. Awesome. Hey, everyone. My bad. Cool. I'm just gonna give everyone a few minutes to hop on, and I'll go ahead and add Lucky. Hey!
Hi, it's so good to see you.
Yeah, same. How are you doing?
I'm all right. There's a lot. I think there's just like a lot of tension in the air because of the pandemic and et cetera, et cetera. So I'm doing okay, but I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here too. Thank you for um sharing space with us.
Of course. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm feeling really excited for this conversation. I'm actually in Boston visiting, or technically Newton, but I'm visiting some friends from school. Well, a friend with other friends I haven't seen in like 6 months. So it's been a really heartwarming time. So I'm
Yeah,
feeling good.
that's so happy to hear that. I'm happy that there's still able to be connections made and like traveling to see one another. That's so important.
Yeah, it truly is. I'm like trying to find a good position for my phone because it's charging and it just keeps wobbling. Gosh. All right. We're gonna give folks like just a minute or two to keep joining.
No problem.
Cool. All right. I think I found a good position. All right. Cool. So it's two over there, right?
Yeah, and it's 5 for you, right?
Yeah.
Okay, bet. Well, for your evening to talk to me.
Word. Um, how is being in back in Oakland been?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, Alexis, I love you too. Being in Oakland has been really nice. It's definitely something that I did not think I was going to be able to do again in this capacity, just because the price of living is so high. And I'm like looking for other housing currently, and it's just wild what they're trying to make people pay for not even that nice of a space. So I'm just really fortunate to be back here and like be back here for the time that I have been here to spend time with my family because my family is actually about to move to Ireland, which
Oh
is
wow.
yeah, it's really good for them. I have an aunt who lives there and she just had a baby, but like they live in the countryside. Mom's gonna go join them, and my grandma's like the person that anchors our family to California. So I have a feeling that we're all about to be in Europe very soon.
Wow.
Yeah,
Such transitions. That's so amazing.
yeah,
I
it's really
hope it's smooth.
yeah, me too. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. We can probably get started in a few. But I really feel you on like the struggle with apartment searching. Um, you already know in New York City, rent is just ridiculous. And you would think that like given everyone fleeing the city while also moving back, like rent
Right.
it would be a bit easier to find a spot, but gentrification is just fucking everything up.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And I feel like even when I was living in New York, I had to be very conscious about gentrifying neighborhoods because I wasn't from there, and also thinking about the fact that the only neighborhoods that I could afford were where like other poor people were living. Um, and so I don't know, just like I feel like a lot of people go into New York and they're not aware of what their body, physical body being in that space means, especially in different types of neighborhoods. Like I was in deep Crown Heights, deep,
Mm.
like damn near not even Crown Heights. Like I was in Brownsville, and I feel in there. I'm also happy like that building was a very gentrified building, and I was taking housing from people that probably need it way more than me.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm
Word. Your audio is cutting out
happy to be back here.
just a little bit. Oh, I think it's lagging a bit, but I can make out most of what you're saying. So we're just gonna wait till we get Lucky back. It is frozen on my screen. Okay, cool. I think it's all good. I'm not sure if I can hear. Oh, okay. I understand what they meant by that. All right, it's just me. Got to be patient with Instagram and technical difficulties because it's really out of our control. So this happened to me the last time. So, all right. Um, Hello, everyone. We're just waiting for Lucky to hop back on. Hey, can you hear me?
Oh my gosh. Sorry, I can kind of hear you, but you're also loading very slowly.
Hey, Mika. Can can people hear me?
Wait, okay, I'm gonna get another phone. 1 second.
Okay, cool. This happened. Can folks hear me? Okay, perfect. I just don't think Lucky can hear me. Okay, you can hear, we can hear. Perfect. We love to see it. So we're just having some technical difficulties. I don't think Lucky can hear me too clearly, so she's getting another phone.
Okay,
Hey.
I think it's working now. I
Okay.
have another phone just in case it decides
Okay.
not to work again.
Okay. All right. Um, if you can't hear me at any given point, feel free to interrupt and let me know. Can you hear me?
Yeah, let me try this.
Okay. All right. Thank you for everyone's patience while we figure this out.
Okay, there we go.
All right. Awesome. I was
Yep.
just beforehand, if at any point you can't hear me, like feel free to interrupt and just let me know.
Okay, for sure.
Yeah, these things happen. But we can go ahead and get started. If you're feeling ready, I can start intros. Um, so I'm going to go ahead and introduce in honor of our roots for anyone who isn't familiar with who we are and what we do. And then I'll go ahead and give you the space to introduce yourself after. If you're cool with it, I was thinking of reading the bio.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, cool. So welcome everyone to In Honor of Our Roots. I'm so happy that all of you are here. I'm so happy to have Lucky here. In Honor of Our Roots is a grassroots event series that provides a brave space for queer creators of color to delve into, share, and document their coming to be slash roots. Um, for anyone who may have been to an event, you know that through workshops, exhibitions, vendors, and performances that revolve around self-reflection themes, we activate a queer imagination, which encourages the spiritual autonomy of our communities and explores the potential for collective ancestry. We just finished a series where we were inviting different artists and creatives and organizers to help us explore all of the concepts. So you can go back to our YouTube or IG to watch those if you're curious. And today specifically, we're going to be exploring a new concept that our team has kind of been sitting with, and we refer to it as ancestral reclamation. And we define that as the ability to connect to your origins, culture, memory, and history on your own terms. And we consider that to be revolutionary praxis in a world that benefits from and intentionally orchestrates the alienation of colonized people from their roots. Um, And specifically, today with Lucky, we wanted to talk about the role of the artist in making the revolution accessible and itself for many queer, trans, Black, Indigenous, and POC creators, how that ties back to ancestral wisdom or guidance. Um, and we also believe that creatives embody the fluid and imaginative thinking required for envisioning these new ways of being that are sustainable, accessible to all types of bodies, capacities, and abilities, and which honor and protect all life. And we firmly believe that Lucky's work really resonated with the theme, especially now with her participation in the launch of the Open Society, which I'm really excited to talk about. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and read Lucky's bio, which is so poetic. So Lucky is a storyteller, is counting all the small intimacies she remembers of touch, is in a complicated process of visualizing joy in her body, but really, really trying anyway, is looking forward to when we can all dance together, me too, is thinking about the heartbreak related to an inevitable escape from the US, is escape planning and loving the present moment regardless, is searching for new love languages, is dreaming because imagination is sanity, although insanity is where her amusements lie. So if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, you can add whatever you'd like about who you are, what you do, and reiterate your pronouns. This is the
Totally.
space.
Thank you so much, Andrea. I'm so happy to be here. And yeah, this is awesome. As they said, my name is Lucky, and I have been going to Pratt Institute in New York for about 3 years. I'm about to enter my senior year for creative writing. So that is like the realistic bio of, I guess, who I am and what I do. Yeah, I do a lot of different things. I am thinking about writing as something that is not only existing on the page, or if it has to exist on the page, then what can we do with that space that is not just filling it with words, and what can words do as an artistic function? So, yeah, I'm sort of having my hands in many different pots. I also am working with a different organization out here called PKO, which stands for Protesters Kit Oakland, and am head of journalism there. So that's really exciting. There's going to be some new things coming up with them. So go ahead and give them a follow. PK Oakland 2020. And yeah, I think besides that, I'm just like really trying to find peace and joy. And I hope that we are all in some way, shape, or form finding that for ourselves right now.
Word. And I pray that your efforts are fruitful. I'm
Thank you.
sending peace your way, and warmth your way. I realized that I also, thank you for sharing about yourself, but I also did this the last live. I forgot to introduce myself.
Yeah.
But I'm Andrea. I am your host today. I use they or she pronouns. I always struggle like describing who I am. Very
Right.
broad question. I'm a student of life, of the earth, of the land. I am an organizer with In Honor of Our Roots. I also work with Radical Love Consciousness, which is how I met Lucky, another revolutionary collective. And yeah, that's that's all I'll say for now. If you're feeling ready, we can go ahead and get into the questions.
Yeah, definitely. Let's go.
Okay, awesome. So, the first question is, how are your creative practices informed by your process of connecting to your origin,
Mm.
culture, your ancestral memory, and history?
Mm. That's a really good question. Right now, specifically for me, that looks like this piece that I am in the process of working on that is called Notes on Chaotic Good. And basically, it follows the prompt for Protesters Kit Oakland. Basically, we're about to launch a website. And so we decided that we're going to have a question of the month. And that question of the month will be in relationship to the short story or article or personal essay that goes out that month. And the question for this month is, what is the color of your city's blood? And so in that question, in the beginning, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to think about Oakland as just a place and like think about the architecture. But as I started to write that story, I realized that it was more about the people that make up the
Mhm.
city of Oakland and what is their blood comprised of, not in terms of like ethnically what their blood is, but like what are we bringing with us and what are we bringing with us when we walk through these streets? What is the energy that we're giving off? That is what is the blood of the city. What is happening in the city? How are different people being affected by different things such as gentrification, which is also a huge problem here, or also just police brutality, white supremacy, are obviously all things that Oakland is facing in kind of crazy ways. And I think that in terms of my lineage, I have to also think about what I'm bringing. And my family has a very interesting history with Oakland. My mom is actually not from Oakland, so her whole side of the family is from Maryland. But my father's side of the family is from Oakland and has a long history of being in the streets of Oakland as drug dealers. So,
Mhm.
sort of tracing that history for myself has been interesting because I also believe that just in and of ourselves, we're bringing all of these things that I guess specifically with our generation, we feel like we need to heal. And so I'm looking at all these stories of specifically my father and my grandfather and his father and the paternal lineage of my family and how that has caused a lot of, I would say, damage to my family, just to be honest. Patriarchy in general is damaging. And so the ways in which they have affected my family for better or for worse, have been things that I'm navigating through art because I think that it's important for me to be navigating those questions within my art, to also be thinking about, you know, who I am as a person and who I'm coming to as a page and what my blood feels like. And so that piece is really kind of thinking about everyone in Oakland or everyone who is a Black Oakland native specifically having this sort of interaction with each other on the street where it's like we have so many wounds and we're openly bleeding. And in
Mhm.
that blood, it's so painful to see other people openly bleeding because in Oakland, especially if you are a Black Oakland native, you know pretty much everyone in your community. And so you have gone through different types of traumas and dramas with those people. And you know how those people are feeling pain sometimes. And I think that in the Bay Area, we don't necessarily have space to share that pain with each other and to be honest in the type of blood that we're bringing into certain spaces and to be honest about seeing each other bleed in certain ways and wanting to care for each other, but also not necessarily knowing how to care for ourselves. And so I think that it's important to think about lineage when also just, I don't know, like putting yourself into creative spaces, not even just your work, but like spaces with other creatives and realizing that our art is something that is very vulnerable to us and something that we are all birthing. As my friend Leo says, your art is something that you birth. And so if I am birthing this thing, then it's really important for me to also be surrounded by people that are understanding the implications of that birth and what it takes for me to bring something to life, literally. So it's a lot of, I think, like emotional um, energy that goes
Hmm.
into that type of work or that type of creation, if that is your intention behind creating, which I think in the Bay Area it is a lot of people's intention, and that we are creating because we have histories of lineages that are not widespread or told, and we are doing the work to tell those stories.
Hmm. Wow, thank you so much for that response. I feel like you just said so many like groundbreaking things, so I really appreciate that. I think something that really stuck with me in this moment, how you said you feel like a lot of people in this generation and our generation are in the process of healing a lot of generational trauma. And that's something that has resonated so deeply. I think so many of the people that I meet and collaborate with and commune with are also in a very intense process of ending a lot of cycles and beginning entirely new ones that
Mm.
are really and I think this really relates to this idea of ancestral reclamation, because I think when we, do that work, that shadow work of delving into the almost like the roles and responsibilities that were given to us through our lineage, like we're also creating so much healing, and that healing
Mm.
ripples to all the people that came before us is also going to inform the way that those that come after us move through the world.
Right.
Um, and I think that like what you were saying, that happens so powerfully through community.
Mm.
And oh man, you said so much. Like just like sitting with so much. I think, as we've been going through these lives, we're also touching, our last series was on collective ancestry.
Mhm.
And what you said really resonates with that too. Like when we enter these shared spaces, particularly artistic spaces, like it is very vulnerable and very intimate, because that's just like we heal through creating.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just think when we enter those spaces, we're also our ancestors. That's what In Honor of Our Roots believes. When we enter shared sacred spaces, we enter with our ancestors, and in the spiritual realm, our ancestors are interacting with one another in community. um,
Mm.
so I also believe that that's where that powerful healing happens as well.
Mm. I love that idea of when we're in community with each other, then all of our ancestors are also in community. That's so important because I think also, like, I mean, a lot of what we're talking about has direct relationships and correlations to history and understanding the history of A, the places that we are in, B,
Hmm.
the people that we are sharing space with, and also just having a basic understanding of what our own familial histories are. And I definitely understand that like familial history is something that a lot of people don't necessarily have access to. And so
Right.
I feel like in exploring what that means for yourself, what connecting with your ancestors means for yourself, even if that is just connecting with immediate ancestors, like people that have recently died in your life, or I feel like people usually think ancestors is like people that are so far back, like you can't even remember them or don't know their names. But it's like whenever someone is about to die in my family, I always remind them that we are preparing to invite an ancestor into our lives. Um, and so I think also just, yeah, I don't know. I think treating more recent deaths as also celebrations of gaining an ancestor, and how healing that would be for one another if we were to acknowledge that in communal spaces. And just like
Hmm.
as a culture, as Americans, who don't necessarily have such a close relationship to death, at least as American for me. Um, yeah.
Right. That's so true. Like I think you that perspective that you practice and share, that when someone, a loved one or someone in your family passes away, you're really gaining an ancestor, makes me think of also like death as rebirth, death
Right.
as life. Through death comes life. So I think that that's a really just moving and illuminating way to view it. And I also wanted to acknowledge what you said about I guess addressing and forming a relationship to the land that we're on,
Mm.
and how our familial histories may be enmeshed in that
Mm.
relationship. So yeah, I'm just sitting with so much. I really appreciate that. um Morena is also affirming you saying, yup, yup, and in relation to systems or practice, right? Like, I think also what you said about this question of access, like, not all of us have clear pathways to connect to our lineage. It's
Mm,
really something that's intangible, you know? It happens a lot through, like, I feel like it's a deeply spiritual in the sense that it's not something that can be explained and articulated
mm,
through material evidence because
right.
we're intentionally separated from that. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I also want to speak to what Morena said about making space for bettering behaviors in your lineage. That's so important because there's a lot of, I mean, a lot of us have really fucked up family histories. And I think also, I mean, not only white people, but black people too. And there's like definitely certain histories that stem from white supremacy. But nonetheless, you know, there were actions committed by certain ancestors that we might not want to highlight. But I think regardless, it is so important to still remember that person and almost to forgive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Not necessarily like, I don't know, not to excuse their behaviors, but to forgive in order for you to have a relationship with them that is beyond what we know as this world and as this form. Because there is something really, just, I think, what is that word? There's something really like able to be new again, not like a rebirth, but like a resilience. There's a resilience
Mm-hmm.
to the human spirit. And I think even in like aspects of spirituality, when you do die, there is a resilience into the way that your energy can transform. And so there's something also to celebrate there.
Right, right. Yeah, I feel like that's also something that I've been sitting with in terms of this idea of ancestral reclamation. I think in order for me to do that healing, like especially as a non-black person, like I think we all have a responsibility to interrogate, you know, the legacies of our ancestors and how and just like Morena mentioned, the internalized fat phobia, transphobia,
Mm-hmm.
ableism, it all exists in our DNA, and it's something that like we can't escape if we want, really bring a world forth that is more just and that is liberating.
Right.
Um, and so it's not a comfortable process.
Mm-mm.
It takes a, like you're saying, it takes a lot of will to confront all of the ugly ass and violent parts of our lineages, but it's definitely necessary.
Mm.
Um, I think in this revolutionary work that we're doing.
Yeah, definitely. It's so not easy. Because also, like, even in contextualizing those traumas or, you know, the problematics of our ancestors, it's like, yeah, you still have to confront the fact that they did that fucked up shit, you know? And so I think it's super necessary in the same way that like fucked up history is necessary because we need to know the truths so that we can further make amends in the correct way and further start to care for people in our families that may have been directly affected by these traumas in a way that they need care for. So, yeah.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much for all that you shared. I'm gonna move on to the next question. And I think it's definitely an extension and expansion of everything that we've been talking about. The next question is can you speak a little bit or how you feel called to the launching of the Open Space Society and how this project may relate to radical ancestral remembrance?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so Open Space Society is something that I'm really excited about. That me and my, I guess, business partner, I hate using that word, but me and my homie, my best friend Leo, created together. Um, and basically, the creation stemmed out of some issues that we were seeing in the Bay Area and Oakland specifically, which is stepping into community spaces, specifically organizational spaces, and even though people seem to be using the correct verbiage and they have the right vocabulary and it seems like, you know, they're using, or it seems like they have decolonial frameworks, um, people aren't necessarily understanding the language that they're using, understanding the language that they're co-opting, understanding the language that they're reclaiming, which might not even be their place to reclaim. And also just like really fucked up dynamics that we were seeing, like sexual harassment and transmisogyny, transphobia, all of these different things that we were experiencing in our community. And so we took it upon ourselves to create an education resource, because also we are both two people that have been through institutionalized academia. And I think just like being in that experience alone is very isolating. And especially when you are someone who is Black, who is going to an academic institution, your goal really is to be like, I'm trying to learn this shit so I can take it back to my community. But I think that once you actually get indoctrinated into that academic setting and environment, you sort of lose the ways in which accessibility becomes something that you're able to do with your community.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like it was a blessing for me to come back to Oakland, because I realized that that was really something that I was pushing myself away from. I wasn't actually becoming more accessible. I was becoming more accessible to a world of academia, which was not, which doesn't serve me, period, because I'm a Black person. So that shit's not going to serve me. But I think that we took those tools and we transformed it into something that could be accessible. So in the beginning, we wanted Open Space Society to be something that was classes that were hosted together, like in real life. Obviously, that couldn't happen because Corona was like, no. Um, but we transformed it to an online format in which we had 6 students in the first class, and the first class was titled Decolonizing Decolonization. And basically what that meant was we were going to do the real decolonial work to understand what decolonization even means. What is that as a practice? Because I feel like a lot of people use the term decolonial, academic institutions use the term decolonial, and they're not actually implementing that into their personal lives. They think that it's something that is a framework that can be adhered to, like a theory. It's not a theory. Decolonizing yourself and your practices is an action. It is a verb. It's something that you must take on with yourself. It's an interpersonal relationship with yourself of unlearning white supremacy, of unlearning patriarchy, of unlearning all these different things that stem from our oppression under a colonized system. So within that class, what we did on the first day was we just took time to get to know each other, which was so important. And I think that if you are going to be having classes or classroom settings, you need to be having conversations on what academia has looked like before for people. What has a classroom setting looked like before? What does your ideal classroom look like? So those were all class questions that we asked the class. And then based on that information, we were able to sort of direct the class more into something that was beneficial for everybody and something that was also healing in that process. Because in order to be able to learn, you have to show up full in some capacity, whether that is full of food or full of water, full of energy. You need to be able to pay attention in the way that like the lesson deserves attention. And so if we have to make it that space so that everyone can do that, then that's our obligation as teachers and facilitators to do that, which is why we ask those questions. And I don't think teachers do that enough. So
Mm-hmm.
that was just necessary. So after we did that, we went over a bunch of different vocabulary words that we defined together, and then some were words that Leo and I had defined separately. So we went through words like colonization, capitalism, patriarchy, and before we went into the definition of the word, we did different activities like, can you do a dance or make a sound that represents capitalism? Can you talk about what your own definitions are of anti-Blackness? And just sort of opening those conversations so that we can see where one another are at before we're just using these words, before we're just like, okay, well, let's talk about, I don't know, white supremacy and capitalism and how those are inherently related. You know, there's not a lot of discourse on how those things are related, what those things actually mean. And so we went through that. And then the next day, we were reading Decolonizing Transgender 101 by Bibi Nohan, which is a great text. It is intended to not be academic, and it's intended to be conversational. So we use that as the text to guide our class, basically, and start with the interrogation of gender. And I think that was a great place to start, because I think that a lot of the violences that we experience or cause to one another are based on our indoctrination into a patriarchal society. And so, in order to understand what that really means, we need to understand and break down what gender was before colonization and what gender is after colonization, what masculinity and femininity are after colonization, what those things can be if we choose to decolonize our frameworks. And so, it just got really personal. And I think that was my favorite part of the class, was just having these conversations with people who looked like me and also people who didn't look like me, who were willing to be vulnerable and interrogate themselves. And I think that that is really what OSS is mostly about, is about providing that space to interrogate ourselves and to hold one another accountable in either interrogating further, like being like, okay, well, if this is your first question, then let's like push that a little bit further and let's see what you're really thinking about, or like let's see what this question is really about, or like um, let's think about maybe if we're asking a certain question, like, okay, well, I don't feel black. What does that mean? You know, like, do you really not feel black, or do you have anti-blackness towards yourself, internalized oppression and internalized racism? Um, and then also to just further hold space for people that wanted to learn about things that they didn't feel like they had access to learn about or to ask other people about. Um, so I guess that's all I'll say about Open Space Society, but we are planning on having way more things. I think that since we want the class format to really be something that does happen face to face, we might not be continuing with having classes per se that's happen on Zoom, but we are in the process of creating a Patreon and creating resources that people can learn from on their own, or maybe just videos that we are doing that give a short history lesson, so that people can really take learning into their own hands, because it's a lot of work, and I gotta get a job, like I'm not getting paid. So so yeah, so Open Space Society is really just, it's so many things, but it's also really whatever people want it to be. And I think
Mm,
that's what I want to stress, is that we are here to support whatever our community needs. It was born out of a community need, and it will always be based on the community's needs, which are ever growing and changing, and transforming. But we're definitely always going to be here to provide definitions, to continue building definitions, and to just be creating new words, because we need new vocabulary.
mm-hmm.
And just envisioning what learning can look like and what healing can look like.
Wow. That's this is such essential work, and it I'm just so like moved in the moment. I think some of those activities that you were speaking to are such a transformative way of learning. I think it made me think of conversations I have a lot with Amy, who you definitely know Radical Love,
Mm-hmm.
and she always tells me that like if you want to be able to unlearn like these systems of oppression that we internalize, like we kind of have to meet each other where we're at and reach a collective understanding of these words to begin with, because
Right.
otherwise, like really, what are we unlearning? Like I think that activity where y'all collectively define these terms is just so amazing. One thing that I wanted to touch on, but yeah, thank you so much for speaking about this project, and I'm wishing y'all the best as you continue to evolve this project, and to honor your own capacity, because I definitely understand that this we don't get compensated for this work, so we have to find ways to make it more sustainable,
Right.
meet our essential needs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're getting mad love in the comments. Mika says you are so needed, Lucky,
Oh,
and
you're needed too.
um, so I think we can move on to the next question if you're feeling down
Yeah.
with it. Um, this question is, um, what role does your queerness play in your artistic practice and organizing?
It plays a big role. I mean, that's just the simple answer. No, I think it plays a huge role, because I think that queerness is something that, as I've stated before, is not only about a sexuality or a sexual preference. It's about I think it's about doing that work of decolonizing your frameworks. Truly, that I think that's what queerness is about, and I think that queerness, just even as a term, allows so many things to be othered in a way that is not other as in like minoritied or made less than, but othered as in it has the possibility of being so many more things than I think we thought. And so I think that queerness is something that is integral to my creativity and also to when I'm organizing, because I think being queer allows me to do that work of being vulnerable and being honest with myself a lot more easily than if I were to be like, I don't know, still stuck in compulsory heterosexuality, which I think I still am stuck in a little bit, definitely, and learning to unlearn. But I think, especially just like in terms of the way that I'm able to even have family, like communal family, is different because I have a queer community. And because community takes on a whole other, it takes on a whole other spirit and body when it is through queerness. And that community is something that is really inherently based on care, and queer community is somewhere where I do always inherently feel safe. And if everyone was queer when I was organizing, I would feel a lot more safer, you know. And I think that there's also something to say about that in terms of like my creativity, which is that it allows me the safety to explore everything that I want to explore, because at the end of the day I know that it is something that is creating imaginative possibility for myself. And that's so essential as a Black person, just to have that freedom and that space to imagine a better life, to imagine things that give me joy in my body, to imagine a space that encapsulates everything that I want to be and everything that I don't know that I am yet. And so I
Mhm.
think that queerness is such a great word and term for that, because I think that there's so much that I could say about who I think I am right now, but queerness holds the space for who I don't know that I am becoming. And that excites me.
Wow, I just got chills. Wow. Um, I just want to read some of the comments to this response. Morena said, queerness as a politic. Mika
Mm,
said, queerness is godliness. I think so much of what you were speaking to just affirms that, queerness is a multi-dimensional experience. It's beyond an experience. It is expansive. It is infinite.
mm, right.
Um, and I also I just want to I'm sitting with so much of what you said about, the safety of like queer community and
Mm,
how it fosters and creates an environment and a space where we feel we trust ourselves enough and we trust other people enough to expand beyond who we think that we are. And
right.
I think what you said about this process of becoming
Mm,
really moved me. Yeah, I just think I constantly have to affirm like my continuous process of becoming, um, and not necessarily knowing like who I can become, but trusting in this change and this evolution that I'm continuously undergoing. I
yeah.
think of, God is change, queerness is change, queerness is evolution. Um, Shout out Octavia Butler. Yeah, I thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah. I also just want to add that I think like transness needs to be a part of that conversation too,
Hmm.
because I think
Hmm.
like that really, I mean, honestly, like I've been doing a lot of work lately better to better my understanding of what it means to actually show up for trans people in my life, and also to understand what trans even means as a term, and also to teach a class on gender. And so that was so key for me. And I think that also, I think that queerness is something that I do love, and queerness as a term is something that I do embrace, but I also need to be honest and like check myself in that I do need to expand my framework for how queerness has been a term that has also been something that has been detrimental to trans people, or that, you know, people
Hmm.
have experienced violence from. And so I think that also transness and trans people are really the people that are like holding other queer people accountable, and that push queer people further to do the work. to be more inclusive, because there's always more work that we could be doing, and that like queer and trans need to have unity. And so like we need to, I think, just like be including that in our vocabulary too, more of like just transness is something that is also something that is like everything that you were saying, expansive,
Right.
and that honestly like might be more expansive than queerness. But yeah.
Word. Word. Thank you for saying that as well. I think it makes me think of what you were talking about with the Open Space Society and how you facilitated that class on or meant or spoke about decolonizing gender and what gender was before um, the Western world and white supremacy decided to say that there were only two genders, which is
Right.
a lie, a
Mm-hmm.
lie. Um, and yeah, I think that that conversation is so essential because gender fluidity and gender bending and gender expansiveness is just as ancient as, you know, like our our ancient civilizations. Like also trans people and people who consider themselves gender fluid in that time were often like um, spiritual practitioners. You know, the people who were the bridge between the physical and spiritual realm. So I think that that is also such a needs to definitely needs to be integrated into our conversations more, just around spirituality and decolonization. And I think it definitely is um, something that we're actively talking about more. And
Right.
that's one of the intentions of In Honor of Our Roots.
Yeah, definitely. I think also there's just like, once you learn about the expansiveness of gender pre-colonization, it opens up so many more realms of imagination for us right now.
Right.
Because I mean, something that I learned through Leo, who is like my work partner, was that gender is, because we were actually having, I was having a conversation with him where I was like, well, do you think that gender is something that has always been inherently political? And I was like, I don't think necessarily it has been, because, you know, I'm thinking about politics in like a Western type of way. But
Mm-hmm.
he was like, no, I think it is inherently political, because gender pre-colonization was always about your role in the community and how you decided to show up. And so there were certain gender identities that were related to roles of singing and dancing. And I think even just having that as an example of ways in which we can have different roles in the community that are just for pleasure, that are just for joy, that are expansive in that type of way is so important, and really opened my eyes to things that I want my community to have, not only in ritual, but
Mm-hmm.
also just in like, that is my job. My job is to sing. My job is to dance. My job, you know, like maybe my job is to write. That there are so many different things, and that, you know, like you can be affirmed in that through and through your personhood and through your work.
Yes. I just have so much gratitude for this conversation. I think what you said directly relates to, you know, what In Honor of Our Roots has recently been exploring, which is the role of the artist in the
Mm,
revolution. And I think that role itself is also very diverse and multidimensional. But I think what you were
mm-hmm.
saying, it we recently were exploring this video. I don't know how exactly how to pronounce the cultural workers' name, but it's about how artists should be considered cultural workers in the revolution because it
Mm,
boosts the morale of revolutionaries, and how
mm,
in the Sandinistas, which were a revolutionary group, a liberation group in Nicaragua, they had a poet and a musician, just like you were talking about, the singers and the
right.
dancers, the visionaries who were part of every brigade of the
Mm,
revolutionary front. And like after supper um, or after a battle, they would share their work to the troops.
mm.
So it's just, I think, yeah, I'm grateful that you brought that up because I think it's so on point.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you for sharing that. Sandinistas. I'm
mhm,
definitely gonna do more research on that,
mhm.
because yeah, I just feel like also we don't like, we're so eager and we have so much energy to like be revolutionaries, but we also don't realize that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And there are so many fantastic organizations and people that have fought before us for justice that have really just like amazing, amazing plans and amazing communities that they build. Like that sounds awesome. I want to be a part of like something that can be militarized, but also not militarized in the sense of like American militarized, but
Yeah.
like can be militarized in also a way that is like, I guess, accounting for self-care and communal care in
Mm-hmm.
the same way. Because I feel like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like a lot of contemporary revolutions are either super military or they're super artistic, and it's like we need to mesh the two,
Mm,
and have both interacting as one.
word. I definitely feel on the looking to past and present examples of revolutionary movements. When you said the word self care, I realized that I learned that the word self care was popularized by the Black Panther Party because they
Mm,
saw it essential to their movement, and I feel like the Black Panther Party is such a beautiful example of combining militancy and community care, making sure
mm,
that every person's needs are accounted for through their free breakfast programs, through their accessible, popular education. Um, so I think, yeah, I definitely think that we should be holding space for all of these different tactics and strategies. And on that note, I think um, I want to ask you the final question, which directly relates to, um, you know, um, I guess just revolutionary practice in general. And the question is, what message, if any, do you have for people interested in doing revolutionary work?
mm. I would say to find your job in the revolution. One thing that really stuck with me when I was reading Elaine Brown's book, I'm forgetting what it's called, but it's basically like an autobiography of her experiences in the Black Panther Party, and before the Black Panther Party. And in the beginning, she says, like, you know, not everyone wants to protest, and not everyone needs to be protesting. Not everyone needs to be on the front lines. And the people that weren't protesting with us and weren't on the front lines were the people that were holding our ammunition. They were the people that had all the guns, that had all the weapons. They were the people that were doing work elsewhere. And I think that what came up for me in these most recent riots, in Oakland especially, was that I was feeling like it was not my place to be on the front lines at all. I did not feel safe. I did not feel prepared for that. I've never gotten into a fight in my life. I do not know combat. I have never been like brutalized by the police. I don't know what that type of force looks like and what that type of violence feels like. And I don't know that I necessarily could emotionally handle that. And I think that if you are someone that wants to be a part of the revolution, you got to find what work you are ready to take on and what work you are ready to do. Um, and also understand that, like, that you don't, it doesn't take huge change or it doesn't take a huge job in order for change to happen. The way that I
Mm,
like to think about change is that it happens based on small intimacies, small iterations of love that happen between, I don't know, maybe even two people. It doesn't have to be such a grand communal change that you're seeking to make. Even if you can change the narrative that's happening within yourself, the frameworks that you're adopting, and the way that you talk to yourself, that's fucking revolutionary. And I think that there's not enough talk on like the revolutionary work that happens within, because
mhm,
that is where the real work is going to happen. And like if you're not doing that work, you're not going to be able to show up in a communal way in the way that you need to. um, which also doesn't mean that you can't also find community to do that work with, that can help facilitate that work and can also encourage you to dig deeper and also help you create a space in which you feel safe to even navigate that. So I would say,
mm,
even if you don't know what your work is, find an organization or find friends that you know that are doing some type of work, and just talk with them and just see, you know, where you're at, to see what you can do. And maybe you're not ready for that right now in the way that you think, but you can do it in other types of ways, and you can prepare yourself in other types of ways. And one of those ways is by getting educated. um, and you know, oss is not the only resource for that. There are plenty of resources, even of in places like New York. You know, there's so many resources for that. And so I think that pay attention to your community and pay attention to who you want to serve, and make sure that who you want to serve is also serving Black liberation and trans liberation, because that's the only way that we're all gonna get anywhere that we need to get. So I guess, you know, I would like read a little bit, maybe watch some videos, follow OSS. But basically, you know, just like talk to your friends. And if you feel like that's not the place, talk to your elders, please.
Mm,
Elders, if you have elders, talk to your elders because they can also help you find where it is that you need to be. Um,
mm,
my grandma helps me a lot with navigating what I feel like my work is, and also, you know, what is the work that needs to be done, and what she feels like she needs to do. That inspires me to think about what I need to do. And so, yeah, there's so much inspiration in so many different places, and I don't ever want anyone to feel like they don't have access to liberation. I don't. Like, you deserve that. And so if you want to do that, you have that in every right and every power in yourself to do that.
mhm. Wow, that was such powerful advice. We transform the world by transforming ourselves. Um, that really, really, yeah, just thank you for sharing that message to the people. I definitely want to echo and emphasize all that was said. And if you're unsure of where to start in terms of finding an organization, hit either of us up.
Right, for real.
Or, yeah. Um, so we unfortunately don't have time to open up for audience questions because um we might have time for one, but IG literally kicks you off of the live
I did not know
at
that.
like
Dang.
exactly 60 minutes. So I was thinking we could start wrapping up, but if anyone has maybe a very brief question, we can try and get to it. But I just want to say thank you to you, Lucky. Thank you so much for taking the time and the energy and the presence to share space with us and to share um, your worldviews, like things that you're sitting with, the projects that you're working on. I want to thank everyone who tuned in. Um, I also forgot to mention this at the beginning, but Lucky's payment info is pinned for anyone who wants to send them some love in the form of money, uh, also reparations. Like they are doing this the work, uh, um, and yeah, so send them love. And I also wanted to open up space for you to maybe talk about to share any other social media links where we can find you, any projects you're working on, any support that you may need at this moment. Um,
Totally. Well, I want to say thank you so much again. Like, I really needed this conversation. Thank you so much for facilitating this conversation. Thank you to everyone who viewed and is watching and was here the whole time. You're amazing. Um, and yeah, you can find me at Garbanzo Frijole on Instagram. That's me. My DMs are open if you want to have further conversations. If there's also something that I said that you want to elaborate on or speak to, I would love to have another conversation. I'm open to learning as well, and also I'm learning so many different things. Like I want conversation. Um, and yeah, I have like a food Instagram because I like to cook, and it's called Jose Curve Hose. It's dumb, but you know, I make food on there, and then I also just post food that I eat. So yeah, it's like a more lax, fun Instagram. And then also Open Space Society for updates on what's happening with OSS, and Protesters Kit Oakland, PK Oakland 2020. Um, yeah, those are all the different things that I am a part of and associated with and would love to have your support in. So
cool. I tried to write out all those handles in the comments. Let me know if they're spelled correctly.
yeah, they're all spelled correctly.
Okay,
I'm
awesome.
Ash.
So the timer is literally ticking. It is counting down until like the seconds for this live to end. So I'm just gonna say another very, very, very warm thank you to Lucky, to everyone who tuned in. I hope the rest of your Sunday is blessed, is all that you need it to be. Yeah.
Yes, you too.
Right. Okay. Sending you mad love. Thank you so much.
You too. Have a
Bye.
wonderful rest of your day.